Stephen Wayne Rochon, U.S. Coast Guard, Rear Admiral. And then from California, Alameda, my first duty station was on a Coast Guard cutter. It's really a ship in the Navy, but we call them cutters in the Coast Guard. So I was assigned to the Coast Guard cutter Whitebush in Astoria, Oregon, for 2.5 years. Great tour of duty, underway a lot, out on the Pacific Ocean and up and down the Columbia River, servicing what they call aids to navigation, the buoys that are out on the water to help ships navigate. So that was a really fun job. And my first cutter, I enjoyed swimming, so I wasn't afraid of the water. But to go all the way from my hometown in New Orleans to Oregon was like going to a foreign country. It was so far away. And as I pulled into this little town called Astoria and was taken to my cutter, I saw this, it's like the workhorse of the Coast Guard. It was a buoy tender, black hull buoy tender. Most Coast Guard cutters that you see on TV are white hulls, and they're involved in law enforcement, drug interdiction, search and rescue. This was dedicated to servicing aids to navigation, so it was a workhorse. And it was interesting to step on board and know that I'd be living and sleeping on the water for a number of years. Of course, you get to go home when the vessel is not underway. I also got married right before I went to my first cutter, and so I took my wife up to Oregon with me, and that was also a challenge because our first child was, the only child was born in Oregon. So you had to know how to give 100% to your job on board that cutter and still give 100% to family. And I learned a lot. And I also learned from not just good leaders, great leaders. My commanding officer was a superb leader, Hawaiian born. I'll never forget him, Daniel Ng, Chief Officer Ng, and that was back in 1971. But the epitome of strong leadership. But I also learned from bad leaders on board that cutter. And one was a petty officer above me who did some improper things and got me involved in, and I think some of it I could say he was not quite fond of anyone that didn't look like him, if you get my drift. He was Caucasian, and me being African American, he decided he was going to ride me pretty hard. But I was pretty thick-skinned, but one day he took it to the limit, and he tried to force me to clean the toilets on board this cutter by putting my hand in the toilet. And I said, but that's not the best way to do this job. There are things called toilet brushes. And he says, no, I'm not going to let you use a toilet brush. You put your hand in with this sponge. And so I refused. And he says, okay, I'm gonna write you up, what they call, I'm gonna book you. And so he did. He wrote me up, and then went to the executive officer of the cutter. And I was called in, and so was this petty officer that was in charge of me. And I thought that this was going to be maybe the end for disobeying a direct order. Instead, the executive officer said that was an improper order, and he chastised the petty officer. And of course, I wasn't very popular with this petty officer after that. But I was determined to advance as quickly as I could. And to make this short, before we left that ship, before he left, I had pressed to get my coursework done, my test, and I ended up surpassing him in rank, and he had to work for me. But I didn't hold that grudge. I didn't ask him to clean the toilet. I wanted to show him leadership, and so he was treated equally. And so you can learn from even poor leadership.